r/MaliciousCompliance BIL tried to blackmail me on road trip, so I left him stranded. I need you to Venmo me $2,000 right now, or I'm calling your husband. I nearly swerved into oncoming traffic. My brother-in-law Jake was staring at me from the passenger seat with this smug little smile that made my stomach drop. We'd been driving for 3 hours through the middle of nowhere, Nevada, still had 5 more hours until we reached his cousin's wedding in Colorado, and he'd just dropped this bomb like we were discussing the weather. What did you just say? My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. You heard me, Sarah. $2,000. Cash App, Venmo, whatever. But I want it transferred before we get to the wedding. He leaned back in his seat like he owned the world. Unless you want me to tell my brother about your little coffee date with that guy from your work. My heart hammered against my ribs. He was talking about Marcus, my project manager, who I'd grabbed coffee with last week to discuss our presentation. It was completely innocent. We'd literally talked about quarterly reports and client feedback for 45 minutes. But Jake had seen us through the cafe window, and apparently his twisted brain had spun it into something else entirely. That was a work meeting, Jake. You know that. Do I? He pulled out his phone and started typing. Because from where I was standing, it looked pretty cozy. The way you were laughing, leaning in close. I got some great photos. Amazing what smartphone cameras can capture these days. The desert highway stretched endlessly ahead of us, heat shimmers rising from the asphalt. No other cars in sight. Just me, Jake, and his disgusting ultimatum. Matt would never believe your lies. Wouldn't he? Jake's voice turned syrupy sweet. You know how jealous my brother gets. Remember when you flipped out because you mentioned your ex's name in conversation? And that was about something from high school. He held up his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. I've already got the message typed up. Hey bro, there's something you need to know about your wife. This was so typical Jake. The guy who'd borrowed money from everyone in the family and never paid it back. Who'd been fired from 3 jobs for personality conflicts, which everyone knew meant he was a manipulative snake who couldn't work with others. Who'd shown up to family dinners with black eyes claiming he'd been jumped when we all suspected he'd been starting fights at bars. And now he had the audacity to try to extort me. Why do you even need the money? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to hear the answer. Let's just say I made some bad bets and some very patient people are becoming impatient. He shrugged. But that's not your problem. Your problem is that you've got about 5 minutes to decide whether you want to pay up or explain to your husband why you've been having secret meetings with other men. The GPS showed we were still 180 miles from the nearest major city. Nothing but desert, tumbleweeds, and the occasional roadkill for miles in either direction. I started looking for the next exit. What are you doing? Jake noticed me checking the signs. Getting gas, I lied smoothly. Can't make it to Colorado on an empty tank. He relaxed back into his seat, probably thinking he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. The Chevron station materialized out of the heat waves like a mirage, one of those ancient, half-abandoned places that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987. Perfect. I pulled up to the pump and Jake immediately got suspicious. Your tank is 3/4 full, he said, glancing at the dashboard. Why are we stopping? Bathroom break. Snacks. You know. I turned off the engine and pocketed my keys. Unless you want me to pee in a cup while driving. He rolled his eyes but didn't move from his seat. Make it quick. And Sarah? That oily smile returned. Don't think you can call your husband and spin some story. I've got those photos backed up in 3 different places, and I'm not afraid to send them to his whole family if you try to get cute. My skin crawled. This wasn't just about money, Jake was enjoying this. The power trip. Having something over me. I could practically see him fantasizing about how he'd lord this over me for years, probably demanding more money whenever his latest scheme fell apart. I grabbed my purse and headed into the station, leaving him sitting smugly in the passenger seat. The ancient bell above the door chimed as I entered. The clerk, a weathered guy in his 60s, looked up from his crossword puzzle. Afternoon, miss. Everything all right? You look a little peaked. Just a long drive, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Listen, is there a back exit to this place? He raised an eyebrow. Through the employee break room, but that's... The guy in my car, I interrupted, the words tumbling out. He's not a good person. I need to get my stuff from the trunk without him seeing me. The clerk studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. Abusive boyfriend? Brother-in-law. Worse in some ways. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to call someone to pick me up, but first I need to. Say no more. He stood up, joints creaking. Tom, he called toward the back. Watch the register. We got a situation. A younger guy emerged from the storage room, took one look at my face, and immediately understood. Apparently this wasn't their first rodeo. Here's what we're gonna do, the older clerk said. Tom's gonna go out there and ask your brother-in-law about his tire pressure. Says he noticed it looked low from inside. While he's distracted checking the tires, you grab whatever you need from the car. I don't want to get you involved in. Miss, I got 3 daughters. If some piece of trash was threatening one of them, I'd hope a stranger would help out. He handed me the keys to the back door. Tom can keep him busy for 5, maybe 10 minutes. That enough? I nodded, not trusting my voice. These 2 complete strangers were willing to help me while my own brother-in-law was trying to destroy my marriage for gambling money. Through the grimy window, I watched Tom approach my car. Jake rolled down the window, looking annoyed. Tom pointed at the front tire and started gesturing. Jake's attention was completely focused on whatever story Tom was spinning. This was my chance. I slipped out the back door and crept around to my trunk, staying low behind the gas pumps. My hands shook as I popped it open and grabbed Jake's duffel bag and garment bag. Everything he'd brought for the wedding weekend. The plan was crystallizing in my mind now. Simple. Direct. Exactly what Jake deserved. I carried his luggage to the front of the store and set it down by the door, then got back in my car. What did that guy want? Jake asked as Tom walked away. Just being friendly, I said, starting the engine. Ready to go? About time. So, have you decided? $2,000, or do I make that phone call? I smiled sweetly at him. I've decided. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the gas station. Jake settled back into his seat, looking satisfied with himself. Smart choice, he said, pulling out his phone. Just send it to my Cash App. I'll delete the photos once it goes through. Oh, I'm not sending you anything, I said calmly, accelerating onto the empty highway. His head snapped toward me. Excuse me? You heard me. I'm not giving you a penny. Jake's face darkened. Then I guess I'll be making that phone call. He started dialing Matt's number. Last chance, Sarah. Go ahead. He paused, finger hovering over the call button. You're bluffing. Try me. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of tires on asphalt. Then Jake hit call. I could hear it ringing through his phone speaker. Hey Matt, it's Jake, he said when my husband picked up. Listen, there's something you need to know about. I snatched the phone from his hand and ended the call. What the hell? Jake lunged for the phone, but I held it out of reach. Give that back. No. I rolled down the window and tossed his phone into the desert. Jake's mouth fell open as we watched his lifeline disappear into a patch of sagebrush. Are you insane? That was a $1,000 phone. Should have thought about that before you tried to blackmail me. His shock quickly turned to rage. You stupid bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done? Those photos are backed up to my cloud, I can still send them. And now Matt's going to wonder what I was calling about. Actually, I said, checking my mirrors, Matt's going to be just fine. I pulled over at the next wide spot in the road and put the car in park. Jake looked around at the vast emptiness surrounding us, nothing but desert in every direction, the nearest building probably 50 miles behind us. What are you doing now? His voice had gone up an octave. I got out and popped the trunk. Jake twisted in his seat to watch as I pulled out his duffel bag and garment bag, dropping them onto the dusty shoulder. Sarah, what the fuck? He scrambled out of the passenger side. You can't just leave me here. Watch me. I slammed the trunk shut and headed back to the driver's seat. Jake ran around to block my path. This is kidnapping. This is illegal. You drove me out to the middle of nowhere. No, Jake. You extorted the wrong person. I stepped around him. And technically, it's not kidnapping if I'm leaving you behind. There's nothing out here. His voice cracked with panic. No self-service, no cars, I could die. There's a gas station 40 miles back. Start walking. 40 miles? In this heat? He grabbed my arm. Sarah, please. I was just joking around. You know I'd never actually send those photos. I yanked my arm free. Funny how it stopped being a joke the second you realized I wasn't going to pay up. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I'm desperate. These guys I owe money to, they're not messing around. They said if I don't pay by Monday. Not my problem. I opened my car door. Jake's desperation turned vicious. You'll regret this, Sarah. When I get back to town, I'm telling everyone what kind of person you really are. Your husband, your friends, your work, they'll all know you left your own family to die in the desert over a few $1,000s. Go ahead, I said, getting into the driver's seat. Tell them I refused to be extorted by a gambling addict who threatened to destroy my marriage with fake photos. They're not fake. Prove it. Oh wait, your phone's somewhere in the sagebrush. Jake pounded on my window as I started the engine. Sarah, please. I'll apologize to Matt, I'll tell him everything was a misunderstanding. Just don't leave me here. I rolled down the window an inch. You should have thought about that before you decided to mess with my life. At least leave me some water. I considered it for about half a second, then shook my head. There's a vending machine at that gas station. Better start walking. As I pulled away, I could see Jake in my rearview mirror, standing beside his luggage in a cloud of dust, gesticulating wildly at my disappearing car. The wedding was still 5 hours away, but suddenly I was looking forward to it. The first hour of driving alone felt like pure freedom. No Jake smirking beside me, no threats hanging over my head, just open highway and classic rock on the radio. But as the adrenaline wore off, reality started creeping in. My phone buzzed with a text from Matt. Jake called but got cut off. Everything okay? My stomach nodded. I pulled over and called him back, hands trembling slightly as I dialed. Hey babe, Matt answered on the first ring. What happened? Jake sounded weird when he called, then the line just went dead. We're having some car trouble, I said, which was technically true if you counted Jake as car trouble. Probably just lost signal in a dead zone. Is he being a pain in the ass? I know how he gets on long trips. You have no idea, I thought. Nothing I can't handle. How's work? Busy, but I keep thinking about you stuck in a car with my brother for 8 hours. You're a saint for doing this. The warmth in Matt's voice made my chest tight. I still can't believe his car broke down the day before the wedding. My grip tightened on the phone. Yeah, what are the odds? We talked for a few more minutes about normal things, his project deadline, dinner plans for when I got back, whether we needed milk. Ordinary married couple stuff that felt surreal considering I just abandoned his brother in the Nevada desert. After we hung up, I sat in my car staring at the endless asphalt ahead. The wedding was still 4 hours away, and Jake's absence was going to require an explanation. The family would be expecting both of us to arrive together. I could lie. Say he got food poisoning at a rest stop and insisted I go ahead without him. Or that he'd gotten a call about a work emergency and caught a flight back home. Simple, clean, no drama. But lying would mean Jake got away with it. He'd eventually make it back to town with some sob story about how I'd overreacted to a harmless joke. He'd play the victim, and knowing Jake's talent for manipulation, people might actually believe him. No. I was done protecting people from Jake's true nature. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jake's mom, Carol. Hi, sweetie. Just checking, what time should we expect you and Jake tonight? I want to make sure we have dinner reservations for everyone. The knot in my stomach tightened. Carol was genuinely sweet, one of the few in-laws I actually enjoyed. She'd been excited about this trip, kept texting me pictures of Colorado tourist attractions we should visit on the drive back. Actually, Carol, there's been a change of plans. Oh no, don't tell me his car problems got worse. I blinked. Car problems? The whole reason you're driving him? Because his transmission went out? Carol sounded confused. Are you feeling okay, honey? My blood turned to ice. Jake had told his own mother the same lie he'd told Matt and me. Which meant this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment plan, he'd been setting this up for days. The broken car story, getting me to drive him, probably even researching that route to find the most isolated stretch of highway for his little extortion scheme. Sarah? Are you there? I'm here, I managed. Carol, we need to talk when I get there. In person. Is everything alright? You sound strange. Everything will be fine, I said, and for the first time in hours, I meant it. I'll see you tonight. After I hung up, I called the hotel and changed my reservation from a double room to a single. Then I texted my sister-in-law Lisa, who was already at the resort. Need to talk to you privately when I arrive. Important family stuff. She texted back immediately, everything okay? Where's Jake? Long story. Don't say anything to anyone until we talk. The Colorado mountains were starting to appear on the horizon, purple peaks rising from the desert like promises. I pressed harder on the accelerator. Jake thought he was so clever, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated exactly how much I was willing to risk to avoid being his victim. Time to show the whole family who Jake really was. The resort appeared like something out of a postcard, sprawling adobe buildings nestled against red rock cliffs, with strings of lights already twinkling in the early evening air. Under normal circumstances, I would have been excited to explore this place. Instead, I felt like I was walking into battle. I'd spent the last hour of the drive rehearsing what I'd say, but my carefully planned speech evaporated the moment I saw Matt's entire extended family gathered on the hotel patio. There had to be 30 people there, aunts, uncles, cousins, plus the bride's family. Everyone was laughing and catching up, drinks in hand, the rehearsal dinner clearly in full swing. And they were all looking at me expectantly. Sarah. Carol rushed over, her face bright with relief. Thank goodness you made it safely. That drive is so long. Where's Jake? Parking the car? The conversations around us died down. I could feel every eye on me, waiting for Jake to appear with his usual swagger and inappropriate jokes. My mouth went dry. Actually, that's what I need to talk to you about. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Jake didn't make it. What do you mean? This came from Uncle Dave, Matt's father. His tone was already suspicious. Dave had never liked me much, thought Matt had married beneath him. Car breakdown? No, the car's fine. I took a deep breath. Jake tried to extort money from me during the drive. When I refused to pay, I left him at a gas station in Nevada. The silence was deafening. Someone's drink glass clinked against a table. A mariachi band played softly in the distance, completely at odds with the tension now crackling through the group. You left him where? Carol's voice was barely a whisper. At a Chevron station about 40 miles east of Tonopah. He's safe, there's food and water, but he'll need someone to wire him money for a bus ticket if he wants to make it back. Uncle Dave stepped forward, his face flushed. Are you out of your goddamn mind? You abandoned my son in the desert over money? She abandoned him over extortion, I corrected, my temper flaring. Jake lied about his car being broken. He planned this whole trip as a setup to blackmail me. That's ridiculous, Dave snapped. Jake wouldn't. Jake threatened to send fake photos to Matt unless I gave him $2,000 to pay off his gambling debts. The words came out louder than I intended. Half the patio was openly staring now, including several members of the bride's family who looked like they wished they were anywhere else. Carol's hand flew to her mouth. Gambling debts? He said some very patient people were becoming impatient. That he'd made some bad bets. I looked around the group, meeting their shocked stares head on. He also admitted he's been lying to all of you about his car troubles. There was never anything wrong with it. Even if that's true, Dave's voice was getting dangerously loud. You don't leave family stranded in the middle of nowhere. You work it out like adults. Adults don't blackmail their sister-in-law with fabricated evidence of infidelity. Alleged fabricated evidence, came a new voice. Matt's cousin Brandon, who'd always been tight with Jake. Convenient that we only have your side of the story. My heart sank as I watched the family divide in real time. Some faces showed shock and disappointment, clearly people who knew Jake was capable of this. But others were closing ranks, choosing blood over truth. You're right, I said quietly. You only have my side. Because Jake is sitting in a gas station in Nevada instead of being here to defend himself. This is insane, Carol whispered, tears starting to flow. The wedding is tomorrow. The whole family is supposed to be together. How could you do this? The accusation hit harder than I'd expected. These people had welcomed me into their family, and now I was the one ruining everything. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. Because I'm tired of protecting Jake from the consequences of his actions, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent patio. How many times has this family bailed him out? How many loans that never got repaid? How many jobs he's lost because of personality conflicts? Carol's tears were flowing freely now. He's been trying to get his life together. By threatening to destroy my marriage for gambling money? I pulled out my phone and showed them my recent calls list. Jake called Matt right before I took his phone and threw it in the desert. He was literally in the process of telling my husband lies about me having an affair when I stopped him. Uncle Dave's face was purple now. You threw his phone away? Do you realize how much those cost? Do you realize how much my marriage is worth to me? I shot back. Jake had photos of me having coffee with a coworker. A completely innocent work meeting that he was planning to twist into evidence of cheating unless I paid up. Photos don't lie, Brandon muttered. Actually, they do. Camera angles, timing, context, Jake could make a handshake look like a romantic encounter if it served his purpose. I looked around the group, desperate for someone to understand. This wasn't some desperate moment of weakness. He planned this. The fake car trouble, getting me to drive him, picking that specific route, he researched the most isolated stretch of highway between here and home. Lisa finally spoke up. Sarah, even if everything you're saying is true, leaving him stranded. was the only way to stop him. I turned to Carol, whose face was a mask of confused heartbreak. He told me those photos were backed up in 3 places. Said he'd send them to Matt's whole family if I got cute. This wasn't going to end with $2,000. This was going to be hanging over my head forever. So you chose to handle it by abandoning him in the middle of nowhere, Dave said coldly. Real mature problem solving there. Where exactly should I have handled it? We were 3 hours from anywhere. Jake had me trapped in a car while he made his threats. What was I supposed to do, sit there and let him destroy my life because walking away might inconvenience him? You could have called us, Carol said desperately. Called his father, called Matt. We could have talked to him. With what phone? Jake was holding mine hostage too. The frustration was building in my chest. Every time Jake screws up, this family finds a way to make it someone else's responsibility. His landlord's fault for not being understanding. His boss's fault for not appreciating his potential. And now it's my fault for not handling his extortion attempt more diplomatically. The bride's mother, a sweet woman named Patricia, cleared her throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private? The other guests are. No, I said firmly. I'm done with private conversations that protect Jake's reputation while he burns down other people's lives. Everyone here deserves to know who they're defending. Uncle Dave stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You watch your mouth, girl. That's my son you're talking about. And that's your son who tried to blackmail me for gambling money, I whispered back. The same son who's apparently been lying to his own mother about why he needed this ride. Carol sobbed openly now. I don't understand any of this. Jake said his transmission went out last week. Said it would cost $3,000 to fix and he couldn't afford. She stopped mid-sentence, her face going pale. $3,000. The same amount he asked you for. $2,000, I corrected gently. But close enough. The pieces were clicking together for Carol, and I could see it breaking her heart in real time. Uncle Dave's expression shifted too, like he was remembering other inconsistencies in Jake's recent stories. Brandon, however, wasn't giving up. Even if Jake was being a jackass, you still committed assault by taking his phone. Probably theft too. And definitely abandonment. I'm pretty sure what you did is illegal in most states. Then Jake can press charges when he gets back to town, I said calmly. Right after he explains to a judge why he was trying to extort me. The standoff stretched across the patio like a live wire. Tomorrow was supposed to be a celebration, but I'd just blown up any pretense of family harmony. But I'd also told the truth. Finally. The silence stretched until Patricia, the bride's mother, stepped forward with a kind of forced diplomacy that comes from years of managing family drama. Perhaps, she said carefully, we should focus on tomorrow's celebration and sort out these family matters after the wedding? Uncle Dave's laugh was bitter. Hard to focus on celebration when one family member just stranded another in the desert. A family member who was committing extortion, I shot back, my patience finally snapping. But sure, let's pretend that detail doesn't matter. Carol wiped her eyes, looking between me and Dave like she was watching her family tear itself apart in real time. Sarah, honey, I believe you about the gambling debts. We've suspected for months. But leaving him out there alone. He's not alone, I interrupted. He's at a gas station with food, water, air conditioning, and a phone he can use to call literally anyone in this family for help. The only thing he can't do is continue threatening me. You could have called one of us instead, Lisa said quietly. We could have figured something else out. Like what? Talk him out of it? I looked around the group. How many times has this family talked Jake out of his bad behavior? He still does it because there are never any real consequences. Brandon pulled out his phone. I'm calling him right now. Getting his side of the story. Good luck. I threw his phone into the desert about 6 hours ago. You what? Carol's voice cracked. Sarah, how is he supposed to call for help? There's a landline at the gas station. He can call collect. I was getting tired of explaining basic logistics to people who seemed more concerned about Jake's convenience than his criminal behavior. Or he can ask the clerks to use their phone. They were very helpful when I explained the situation. Uncle Dave's eyes narrowed. You told strangers about family business? I told strangers that the man in my car was threatening me and I needed help getting away from him. My voice rose again. Because that's what normal people do when someone tries to extort them. Keep your voice down, Dave hissed, glancing around at the other hotel guests who were definitely watching our family meltdown with interest. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? Your son threatened to destroy my marriage for gambling money, but I'm the problem because I'm talking too loud about it. Lisa stepped between us. Okay, everyone needs to calm down. Sarah, you're exhausted from driving all day. Uncle Dave, you're upset about Jake. But we're all family here. Family doesn't blackmail each other, I said flatly. Family also doesn't abandon each other in the desert, Dave fired back. Carol's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went white. It's Jake. He's calling from some number I don't recognize. The entire group went silent. Carol stared at her phone like it might explode. Answer it, Dave commanded. Carol's hand shook as she swiped to accept the call. Jake? Honey, are you okay? Even from several feet away, I could hear Jake's voice crackling through the speaker, high-pitched with rage and panic. The words weren't clear, but the tone was unmistakable, furious, desperate, probably spinning some version of events that painted him as the victim. Carol's face cycled through a dozen emotions as she listened. Slow down, honey. What do you mean she stole your luggage? She said she left it with you. More shouting from the phone. Carol held it away from her ear slightly. Jake, you're not making sense. Sarah said you tried to extort money from her. Is that? The line went dead. Carol stared at her phone. He hung up on me. Brandon immediately started dialing. I'm calling the gas station. Getting the real story. There is no other story, I said, exhaustion finally hitting me like a truck. Jake got caught being Jake, and now he's trying to control the narrative from 2 states away. Uncle Dave's face was stone. We'll see about that. And I realized this was far from over. Brandon's call to the gas station lasted about 3 minutes. I watched his face carefully, trying to read his expression as he talked to whoever answered. The rest of the family clustered around him like he was receiving divine revelation. He said into the phone. And did she say why she was leaving him there? A pause. I see. And how did he seem when you talked to him? My stomach clenched. Jake was probably spinning some sob story about his crazy sister-in-law abandoning him over a simple misunderstanding. Brandon hung up and turned to face the group. Okay, so I talked to the clerk who was there. Old guy named Frank. What did he say? Carol asked desperately. He said Sarah came in looking scared and asked to use the back exit. Told them Jake wasn't a good person and she needed help getting her stuff without him seeing. Uncle Dave crossed his arms. So she admits she was planning to ditch him. Frank also said, Brandon continued, that when Jake realized what happened, he came storming into the station screaming about his bitch sister-in-law and demanding they call the police to arrest her for theft and abandonment. Carol winced at the language. What did they tell him? That he was free to use their phone to call whoever he wanted, but they weren't getting involved in family drama. Brandon looked directly at me. Frank said Jake spent 20 minutes ranting about how you'd stolen his luggage and left him to die, and that he was going to make sure you went to prison. Sounds like Jake, I muttered. But here's the thing, Brandon's tone shifted slightly. Frank also said that when Jake was making his calls, he kept talking about needing money for a bus ticket and how his business associates were going to be pissed if he didn't make it back by Monday with their cash. The group went quiet. Even Uncle Dave's expression flickered with uncertainty. Business associates? Carol asked weakly. Brandon nodded. Frank said Jake seemed more worried about these associates than about being stranded. Kept saying something about how they don't accept excuses and he was already on thin ice. Lisa stepped closer to me. Sarah, when Jake mentioned owing money to people, did he say who? Just that some very patient people were becoming impatient. And that they weren't the type to accept late payments. I looked around the group. He was scared when he talked about them. Really scared. Uncle Dave's bluster was fading fast. Jake's always been dramatic. Probably just credit card debt or something. Credit card companies don't usually threaten physical violence, I said quietly. Jake mentioned they weren't messing around and that he had until Monday to pay up. Carol's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She answered immediately. Jake? Mom, listen to me. Jake's voice was clearer now, and I could hear the calculated calm he used when he was trying to manipulate someone. Sarah had a complete mental breakdown out here. I think she's having some kind of psychotic episode. She started screaming about how everyone was against her, threw my phone away, and just left me here with nothing. My blood boiled, but I stayed quiet. Let him dig his own grave. She was talking crazy stuff about work affairs and blackmail, Jake continued, his voice perfectly pitched for maximum sympathy. I think the stress of her marriage problems might be making her paranoid. You know how Matt's been working late a lot lately? Carol's eyes flicked to me uncertainly. Jake was good at this, mixing just enough truth with lies to make everything sound plausible. Honey, are you safe? Do you need us to come get you? I'll figure something out. But Mom, I'm really worried about Sarah. I think she might be dangerous. Maybe you should call Matt and warn him? That's when I realized Jake's real plan. He wasn't just trying to save face anymore. He was trying to destroy me completely. The phone call with Jake continued for another few minutes, each word calculated to paint me as an unstable woman having a breakdown. I listened to him describe my erratic behavior and paranoid delusions while Carol's expression grew more concerned. When she finally hung up, the damage was done. I could see it in the way people were looking at me now, not with anger anymore, but with uncertainty. Pity, even. Sarah, Carol said gently, have you been feeling okay lately? Any stress at home? And there it was. Jake's masterpiece. Turn the victim into the aggressor, then flip it again to make the aggressor look mentally ill. Classic manipulation, and it was working. I'm fine, Carol. Jake is lying. But honey, you did throw his phone away. And you did leave him stranded. Her tone was the kind reserved for calming down someone having a crisis. Maybe you're more upset than you realize? Uncle Dave jumped on the opening. I've been saying for years that Matt works too much. Leaves his wife alone all the time. That kind of stress can make people do crazy things. I'm not crazy, I said, but even I could hear how defensive I sounded. Jake tried to extort me. Everything else is just him covering his tracks. Brandon pulled up something on his phone. Jake just posted on Facebook. Says he's stranded in Nevada because of a family emergency and asking if anyone can help with bus fare. I grabbed his phone to read the post. Jake had crafted it perfectly, vague enough to generate sympathy without providing details that could be fact-checked later. The comments were already pouring in from friends and distant relatives offering prayers and small amounts of money. He's crowdfunding his way home, I said incredulously. Probably going to pocket whatever's left after the bus ticket. Or maybe he's genuinely stuck and doing what he has to do, Lisa said softly. Sarah, I know Jake can be difficult, but this whole situation feels extreme. That's when my phone rang. Matt's contact photo filled the screen, a silly selfie we'd taken on our last anniversary. My stomach dropped. I have to take this. I walked away from the group, but not far enough that they couldn't see my face as I answered. Hey babe, how's Colorado? Good. Beautiful drive. I tried to keep my voice normal, but Carol was watching me intently, clearly looking for signs of the instability Jake had described. Listen, I just got the weirdest call from Jake. Well, kind of. The line was terrible and he kept cutting out, but he sounded really upset about something. Said there was a family emergency? My heart hammered. What exactly did he say? It was hard to understand, but something about you being sick. And that I should call you right away to check on you? Matt's voice was concerned but not panicked. Are you feeling all right? You do sound a little off. I closed my eyes. Jake was playing this perfectly. Planting seeds of doubt without making specific accusations. Let Matt's own worry and imagination fill in the blanks. I'm fine. Just tired from the drive. Where is Jake, anyway? When he called, it sounded like he was at a truck stop or something. Lots of background noise. The family was still watching me, hanging on every word of my side of the conversation. I could practically see them analyzing my body language for signs of deception or breakdown. He's dealing with something. I'll explain everything when I get home. Sarah, you're scaring me a little. What's going on? And that's when I realized Jake had backed me into the perfect corner. If I told Matt the truth now, over the phone, with his family watching my every reaction, it would look exactly like the paranoid breakdown Jake had described. But if I didn't tell him, Jake could call back later with his version of events and make me look like a liar. Can I call you back in a few minutes? I need to handle something here first. Okay, but Sarah? I love you. Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out together. After I hung up, the silence stretched across the patio like a judgment. Carol stepped forward, her face full of motherly concern. Honey, why don't you sit down? You look pale. And I realized Jake might actually win this one. The concern in Carol's voice was like a slap in the face. She was looking at me the way you'd look at a wounded animal, with pity and caution. Jake's poison was already working its way through the family, reframing my justified anger as mental instability. I don't need to sit down, I said, but my voice came out sharper than intended. I need you all to stop treating me like I'm having a breakdown just because Jake told you I am. Nobody said anything about a breakdown, Lisa said carefully. We're just concerned. You're concerned because a manipulator called you and planted the idea that I'm unstable. This is exactly what Jake does. He creates a crisis, then positions himself as the victim when people react to his behavior. Uncle Dave stepped forward, his earlier anger replaced by something worse, condescending patience. Sarah, I think maybe you should call Matt back and ask him to drive up here. Get you some support. I don't need support. I need you people to stop enabling Jake's garbage behavior. My frustration was mounting, and I could see them interpreting every raised word as evidence that Jake was right about my mental state. Carol's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and frowned. It's a text from Jake. He says he's worried about all of us being alone with you tonight. My mouth fell open. Are you kidding me? He's trying to make you afraid of me now? He's just concerned, Carol said, but her voice wavered. He says you were talking about wanting to hurt people who've wronged you. That is complete bullshit, I snapped, then immediately regretted the outburst. Every emotional response I had was just feeding into Jake's narrative. Brandon held up his phone. He just posted another Facebook update. Says he's praying for a family member who's going through a mental health crisis and asking people to keep us all in their thoughts. The sophistication of it was breathtaking. Jake was building a public record of my supposed breakdown in real time, creating a version of events that would be impossible to refute later. By tomorrow, half of Matt's extended family would know that I'd had some kind of psychotic episode and abandoned poor Jake in the desert. He's playing all of you, I said, but even I could hear how desperate I sounded. Can't you see that? He's sitting in an air-conditioned gas station orchestrating this whole thing to make me look crazy. Sarah, Carol's voice was gentle but firm. I think you need to consider that maybe your perception of what happened isn't entirely accurate. Stress can make us remember things differently. My perception? I stared at her. Carol, your son called me from this phone 3 hours ago demanding $2,000. That's not a perception, that's a fact. But there's no record of that call, Brandon pointed out. Jake's phone is gone, remember? You threw it away. So we only have your word about what was said. The trap was perfect. By destroying Jake's phone, I'd eliminated the evidence of his threats while making myself look unstable. And now every detail of my story sounded increasingly paranoid to people who wanted to believe Jake was just a troubled kid instead of a calculating predator. Lisa stepped closer, her voice the kind of soft tone you'd use with a confused elderly relative. Why don't we get you checked into your room? You've had a really long day, and tomorrow's going to be emotional with the wedding. I'm not checking into my room like a child being sent to timeout. My voice was rising again, and I could see the family exchanging glances. I'm a grown woman who refused to be extorted, and I'm not going to be gaslit into thinking that makes me mentally ill. Carol's eyes filled with tears again. Oh honey, no one thinks you're mentally ill. We're just worried about you. But I could see it in their faces. Jake had done exactly what he threatened. He was destroying my relationships with his family, just not the way I'd expected. My phone rang again. Matt's name on the screen felt like a lifeline and a death sentence all at once. This time, I was going to have to tell him everything, whether his family believed me or not. The question was, would my own husband think I was crazy too? I answered Matt's call while walking away from the group, needing distance from their watchful eyes and whispered concerns. Sarah, I've been thinking about Jake's call, and something's not right, Matt said without preamble. He sounded really agitated, and now he's not answering his phone. What's really going on? I took a deep breath. Jake tried to blackmail me, Matt. He threatened to send you fake photos of me cheating unless I gave him $2,000 for gambling debts. Silence. Then, what? His car was never broken. He planned this whole trip to get me alone and extort money from me. When I refused to pay, I left him at a gas station. You left him where? Matt's voice was sharp with disbelief. At a Chevron station outside Tonopah. He's safe, but I wasn't going to sit there and let him destroy our marriage for drug money or whatever he owes people for. Sarah, slow down. You're saying Jake blackmailed you? That doesn't make sense. What photos? The doubt in his voice cut deep. He took pictures of me having coffee with Marcus last week. You remember, when we discussed the Morrison presentation? Jake saw us through the window and decided it looked suspicious. Coffee with Marcus, Matt repeated slowly. The project meeting you mentioned? Yes, but Jake threatened to twist it into something else. He said he had the photos backed up in 3 places and would send them to your whole family if I didn't pay up. I could hear my voice getting faster, more desperate. He literally called you to start telling lies when I took his phone away. Behind me, I could hear Carol talking quietly to the others, probably sharing Jake's latest text updates about Mike's deteriorating condition. Okay, but Sarah, leaving him stranded in the desert? That's pretty extreme, even if he was being an ass. Even Matt. My own husband was questioning my judgment instead of being outraged that his brother had threatened me. Extreme? He was holding my marriage hostage for gambling money, Matt. What was I supposed to do? I don't know, call me? We could have figured something else out. He was sitting right there. You think I could have a private conversation about his extortion plot while he listened? My voice was rising again, and I could see the family turning to stare. Besides, he'd already started calling you with his lies before I stopped him. But you threw his phone away. So now we can't even. Can't what? Verify his story? I laughed bitterly. Matt, he's been lying to everyone. His car was never broken. He told your mom the same story he told us, but then asked me for $2,000 when he told her he needed $3,000 for transmission repairs. You're saying he's been planning this for days? I'm saying your brother is a sociopath who researched the most isolated highway between home and Colorado specifically so he could trap me with his threats. Matt was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. Sarah, you sound really upset. Maybe more upset than the situation warrants? There it was. Jake's poison reaching even my husband. More upset than the situation warrants? I repeated. Matt, your brother threatened to destroy our marriage. How upset should I be? I just mean, if the photos were innocent, and we both know they were, then his threats were empty. Maybe this could have been handled without leaving him stranded somewhere. Empty threats? He was literally in the process of calling you when I stopped him. And he told me this wouldn't end with $2,000, that he'd keep hanging this over my head whenever he needed money. But we don't know that for sure now, because I threw his phone away, I know. I wanted to scream. Matt, he told your family I'm having a mental breakdown. He's posting on Facebook about my crisis. He's systematically destroying my reputation because I refuse to be his victim. Jake posts dramatic stuff on Facebook all the time. Nobody takes that seriously. I looked back at the patio where his family was still clustered together, their faces full of concern and doubt. Your family is taking it seriously. They're looking at me like I'm dangerous. They're probably just worried. This is a lot of drama for a wedding weekend. Drama. Like I caused this. Like I was the problem. Matt, do you believe me about the blackmail? Another pause. Too long. I believe you think that's what happened. My heart stopped. You think that's what happened? Matt, I'm telling you exactly what your brother did. I'm just saying, you've been stressed lately with work, and this drive was long, and maybe Jake was joking around in poor taste, but he wasn't joking. My voice came out flat, defeated. Okay, let's say everything happened exactly like you said. We still need to figure out how to handle this as a family. Jake's stranded, the wedding's tomorrow, everyone's upset. As a family. Like I was supposed to fix the mess Jake had created by targeting me. I hung up on my own husband and stood alone in the Colorado mountains, finally understanding that Jake had won after all. The silence after hanging up on Matt felt like falling into a void. My phone immediately started buzzing with his return calls, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Behind me, I could hear the family's hushed conversations growing more urgent. She just hung up on Matt, I heard Lisa whisper. That's not normal. I turned around to find 30 pairs of eyes staring at me with a mixture of concern and fear. Even the bride's family was watching now, probably wondering what kind of unstable in-law they were about to inherit. My phone buzzed with a text from Matt, please call me back. We need to talk about this calmly. Calmly. Like I was the one being irrational. Carol approached me slowly, hands raised like she was approaching a spooked horse. Sarah, honey, Matt's really worried. He asked us to make sure you're okay until he can drive up here. He's driving here? My stomach dropped. Tonight? He's leaving in about an hour. Should be here by morning. Carol's voice was gentle but firm. Maybe that's for the best? You two can work through whatever's happening together. Uncle Dave stepped forward, his earlier hostility replaced by grim determination. I've been thinking about this whole situation, and I'm calling the police in Tonopah. Jake might talk tough, but he's still family, and it's going to be below freezing in the desert tonight. The gas station has heat, I protested. He's not camping outside. The gas station closes at 11, Brandon said, looking up from his phone. I called back to check. After that, Jake stuck outside until 6 a.m. My confidence wavered. I hadn't thought to ask about their hours. What if Jake really was in danger now? He can call a cab, get a motel room. With what money? Dave's voice was sharp. You took his luggage, remember? His wallet was in his duffel bag. The words hit me like a slap. I tried to remember, had Jake taken his wallet when we stopped for gas? Or had he left it in his bag in my trunk? I'm not sure if he had his wallet with him. Carol gasped. Sarah, if he doesn't have money for shelter. He was trying to extort me. But even as I said it, I could hear how hollow it sounded now. If Jake was stuck outside in near-freezing temperatures without money for shelter, then I'd potentially put him in real danger. Lisa pulled out her phone. I'm calling that gas station right now to check if Jake's still there. The family gathered around as she dialed. I stood apart, feeling increasingly isolated as the implications of my actions sank in. I'd been so focused on stopping Jake's threats that I hadn't fully considered the logistics of abandoning him. Hi, this is Jake Morrison's sister, Lisa said into the phone. I'm calling to check if he's still at your station. Medium height, brown hair, would have been pretty upset. I watched her face change as she listened to the response. When did he leave, she asked. Did he say where he was going? My heart started racing. If Jake had left the gas station on foot, in the desert, at night. Lisa hung up and turned to the group, her face pale. Jake left about 2 hours ago. The clerk said he seemed really agitated and kept talking about having to get somewhere by Monday. He asked for directions to the nearest truck stop and started walking. Walking? Carol's voice cracked. In the dark? How far is the nearest truck stop? Brandon was already pulling up maps on his phone. 18 miles. On a desert highway with no sidewalks or streetlights. Uncle Dave's face was stone cold as he stared at me. If something happens to my son, I'm holding you personally responsible. I felt the weight of 30 pairs of eyes judging me, and for the first time since this started, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. My phone rang. Matt again. This time, I had to answer and tell him his brother was walking alone through the Nevada desert in the dark. and that it was all my fault. I answered Matt's call with trembling hands, the weight of 30 stairs pressing down on me like a physical force. Sarah, thank God. Listen, I've been thinking about what you said, and... Matt, Jake left the gas station. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. He's walking to another truck stop. In the dark. 18 miles. Dead silence. What do you mean he's walking? The clerk said he left 2 hours ago looking for the nearest truck stop. Matt, I don't know if he had his wallet. It might have been in his luggage. My voice was shaking now. If he doesn't have money for a cab or a room. Jesus Christ, Sarah. Matt's voice was sharp with panic. 18 miles in the desert at night? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Behind me, Uncle Dave was already on his phone with what sounded like the Nevada State Police. Carol was crying openly, and I could hear her whispering prayers under her breath. I thought he'd stay at the gas station until morning, I said weakly. I didn't think he'd try to walk. You didn't think? Sarah, you left my brother in the middle of nowhere. Matt's voice cracked. Whatever he did, whatever stupid thing he said, he could die out there. The word die hit me like a physical blow. Images flashed through my mind. Jake collapsed on the side of a dark highway, hypothermic, hit by a truck whose driver couldn't see him in time. The police are sending someone to look for him, Dave announced grimly. Highway patrol's going to sweep the route between the gas station and the truck stop. Lisa grabbed my arm. Sarah, you need to call that gas station back. Find out exactly what Jake said, which direction he went, anything that might help them find him. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. The phone rang 4 times before someone answered. Chevron. Hi, this is about Jake Morrison, the man who was stranded there earlier. I'm his sister-in-law. The police are looking for him and I need to know exactly what he said when he left. Hold on, let me get Frank. He talked to the guy. The seconds stretched endlessly as I waited. Matt was still on the line, and I could hear him talking to someone else, probably making his own calls to search and rescue. This is Frank. You calling about that angry fella? Yes, please. What exactly did he say when he left? Well, he was pretty worked up. Kept saying he had to get back to Vegas by Monday or some people were going to be real unhappy with him. Asked if there was anywhere closer than the truck stop, but I told him that was his best bet for getting a ride. Did he have a wallet? Money? That's the thing, he kept asking if we'd front him cash for a taxi, said his sister-in-law had his wallet. I told him we don't do loans, company policy. He got real mad about that. My stomach dropped to my shoes. Jake really was walking 18 miles through the desert with no money, potentially no identification, and people in Vegas who were apparently violent enough to motivate this desperate trek. Which direction did he go when he left? North on 95. Told him to stay on the shoulder, where something reflective if he had it. But I gotta tell you, miss, that stretch of road is dangerous even in daylight. Trucks come through there going 80, and there's no street lights for miles. When I hung up, the entire family was staring at me with expressions ranging from horror to barely contained rage. He doesn't have his wallet, I announced to the group. He's been walking for 2 hours with no money, trying to get back to Vegas because people he owes money to want him back by Monday. Uncle Dave stepped forward, his face murderous. If my son dies because of your vindictive bullshit. Dave, stop. Carol's voice was firm despite her tears. Fighting won't help Jake now. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your husband called me. This is Jake. I'm at mile marker 47 and a truck driver is giving me a ride to Vegas. Tell the family to call off the search. And Sarah? This isn't over. Relief and dread crashed over me in equal waves. Jake was safe. But now I had to face the consequences of what I'd done. I stared at Jake's text message, relief and terror warring in my chest. He was alive, but that last line, this isn't over, sent ice through my veins. He's safe, I announced to the group, holding up my phone. A truck driver picked him up. He's getting a ride to Vegas. The collective exhale was audible, but Uncle Dave's expression didn't soften. Let me see that message. I handed over my phone reluctantly. Dave read it aloud, his voice getting darker with each word. When he reached this isn't over, Carol gasped. That sounds like a threat, Lisa whispered. Brandon was already typing on his phone. I'm texting him right now. This family drama needs to stop. Don't, I said quickly. Just, let him cool off first. Cool off? Dave's laugh was bitter. You nearly got my son killed, and you're worried about him cooling off? My phone rang in Dave's hands. Matt's name on the screen. Give me that. I snatched it back and answered. Matt? Thank God. I heard Jake's okay. His voice was strained with exhaustion and stress. Yeah, he got a ride with a trucker. I'm still driving up there. We need to talk about this face to face. Matt paused. Sarah, I've been thinking about everything you said, and I believe you about the blackmail attempt. The words should have felt like vindication, but they came too late. You believe me now? After I nearly got your brother killed? You didn't know he'd tried to walk 18 miles in the dark. That was his choice. But his family didn't see it that way. I could feel their judgment like a physical weight. Even if Jake had tried to extort me, I'd escalated it to a potentially deadly situation. Carol approached slowly, her face etched with exhaustion. Sarah, honey, I think it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding tomorrow. The words hit like a slap. Carol. I'm not saying you're a bad person. But Jake will probably try to come back for the wedding, and with everything that's happened. She trailed off, unable to finish. You're uninviting me from a family wedding because I wouldn't let Jake blackmail me? You're uninviting yourself, Dave said coldly. The moment you decided your pride was worth more than family. Lisa stepped between us. Everyone's emotional right now. Maybe we should table this discussion until tomorrow. But I could see it in their faces. The damage was done. Even if everything I'd said about Jake was true, I'd crossed a line by leaving him stranded. In their minds, I'd become the villain of this story. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake, just got to Vegas. Calling a lawyer tomorrow about filing charges. Hope the wedding is worth it. My blood turned to ice. Charges. Abandonment, theft of his luggage, maybe assault for taking his phone. Jake wasn't just threatening my relationship with Matt's family anymore, he was threatening my freedom. What's wrong? Carol asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. Her face went pale. He's talking about pressing charges, I said numbly. Uncle Dave's smile was sharp and satisfied. Good. Actions have consequences. That's when I realized this nightmare was just beginning. Jake wasn't going to let this go. He'd use the legal system, the family, social media, whatever it took to destroy me completely. And worst of all, he now had the perfect story to tell. The unstable sister-in-law who'd snapped and left him to die in the desert. I looked around at Matt's family, people who'd welcomed me for 5 years, and saw nothing but suspicion and disappointment. Jake had won after all. Even from 200 miles away, he was still manipulating the narrative, still making himself the victim. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Matt. It was my boss. I stared at my boss's name on the screen, my heart hammering. Why would Rebecca be calling me at 9 p.m. on a Friday night? Rebecca? Sarah, I just got the strangest call from someone claiming to be your brother-in-law. He said there was a family emergency and you'd been in some kind of accident? My stomach dropped. Jake was already starting his revenge campaign, and he was targeting my job. I'm fine, Rebecca. There's no emergency. That was my husband's brother, and he has some issues with honesty. He sounded very convincing. Said you'd hit your head and might not remember the accident clearly. Wanted to know if you'd been acting strangely at work lately. I closed my eyes. Jake was building a case for my supposed mental breakdown, gathering evidence from every aspect of my life. Rebecca, I need to tell you what really happened. I gave her the abbreviated version, Jake's extortion attempt, my decision to leave him at the gas station, his current campaign to discredit me. When I finished, there was a long silence. Sarah, this is a lot of personal drama. I'm concerned about it affecting your work environment. It won't. Jake doesn't even live in our state. This is just his way of lashing out because his plan failed. Still, if he's calling here making accusations about your mental state. Another text from Jake appeared, just called your work. Nice boss you have. Very concerned about your stability. I showed the phone to Carol, who read it with growing alarm. He's calling Sarah's workplace now, Carol announced to the group. This has gone too far. Even Uncle Dave looked uncomfortable. Jake needs to stop this nonsense. But I was done being reactive. Done letting Jake control the narrative while I scrambled to defend myself. Actually, I think Jake just made a crucial mistake, I said, pulling up my phone's recording app. Rebecca, are you still there? Yes, but Sarah. Can you tell me exactly what Jake said when he called you? As Rebecca recounted the conversation, I recorded every word. Jake's story about an accident, his questions about my behavior, his suggestion that I might not remember things clearly. When she finished, I had something even better than evidence of his original blackmail attempt. I had proof of his ongoing harassment campaign, documented in real time. Thanks, Rebecca. I'll handle this. I hung up and looked around at Matt's family. Anyone else think Jake's behavior tonight sounds like someone who was genuinely victimized? Brandon frowned. What do you mean? I mean victims don't usually launch coordinated attacks on their attacker's reputation, employment, and mental health. They call the police and file reports. I pulled up Jake's Facebook posts from tonight, reading them aloud. Listen to this, praying for a family member going through a crisis. Posted 20 minutes after he got the truck ride. Then, sometimes we have to set boundaries with toxic people, even family. Carol's expression shifted as she listened. He's posting on social media instead of calling us to say he's safe? Because this was never about his safety. It was about punishing me. I showed them my recording app. And now I have his harassment documented, along with witness statements from the gas station clerks who saw him leave voluntarily. Uncle Dave crossed his arms. That doesn't change what you did. You're right. What I did was refuse to be extorted and then remove myself from a threatening situation. I looked around the group. What Jake did was commit a felony, then launch a harassment campaign when it backfired. My phone rang. Matt again. Hey, I answered. Before you say anything, I need you to listen to something. I played him the recording of Rebecca's call, then read him Jake's texts and Facebook posts. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Jesus, Matt finally said. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you immediately. It's okay. Jake's good at what he does. No, it's not okay. My brother tried to destroy our marriage for gambling money, and I questioned your version of events. His voice was heavy with guilt. I'm turning around. I'm not coming to Colorado. Why? Because I'm driving to Vegas to have a conversation with Jake about what happens next. And to make sure he understands that if he contacts you, your work, or anyone else in our lives again, he'll be dealing with me. Behind me, I heard Uncle Dave muttering to Carol about family loyalty. But Carol was staring at Jake's Facebook page, her face pale. Sarah, she said quietly. Look at this. Jake had posted a new update. Sometimes family disappoints you, but Vegas always welcomes you back. Ready to get back to business. Money bag money with wing slot machine. Gambling emojis. Posted from Vegas, where his business associates were waiting. Carol showed the post to Uncle Dave, whose face went through several emotions before settling on disgusted resignation. Well, he said heavily. I guess we know where Jake's priorities are. And just like that, the family narrative shifted. Because while they might have been willing to excuse Jake's extortion as desperation, they couldn't ignore him celebrating his return to the gambling that had caused this mess in the first place. Sarah, Carol said, tears in her eyes again. I owe you an apology. And Jake owes you more than that. I looked around at the family, my family, despite everything, and felt something settle in my chest. The wedding's tomorrow, I said. Let's focus on celebrating something good for once. Jake could post all the threats he wanted from Vegas. But he'd lost his audience. And I'd learned something important. Sometimes the only way to stop a manipulator is to let them reveal who they really are.